This episode of Planted is brought to you by Pax Labs.
The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planted with Sara Pine. I'm Sara Pine, your host, and today's guest is comedian, broadcaster, political commentator, actor, writer, and one of my favorite people to listen to when trying to make sense of America, John Fugelsang. John has built a career out of saying the thing a lot of people are thinking but aren't sure how to articulate yet. He's smart, hilarious, deeply empathetic, and somehow manages to survive consuming American politics professionally every single day, which honestly, it kind of feels like an endurance sport at this point. So today we're talking politics, propaganda, cannabis, outrage culture, morality, media narratives, healing, and how the hell do any of us stay human through all of this? John, welcome. Thanks for being on the show. I'm just really excited to have you here today.
What a great introduction, Sara. My God, thank you. I almost feel bad now that I have to drag your show down to my level after such a wonderful introduction. Thank you. I feel like I'm such a success as a charming sociopath if I can make you think that. So thank you very much for having me.
Oh, I was thrilled that you said yes to being on the show, and I was reading your book, and all I have to say is, amen, brother.
Thank you.
But before we get into all of that, I want to ask you the question I always ask all my guests for the first time they're on my show. What was your first cannabis experience?
It's a great question. It really is two, and they both relate to the same time in my life. I grew up on Long Island, on the Isle of Long, in the heart of the Buttafuoco Belt. And at a very young age, I realized I got cast in my first regional theater production, and I got paid like $3 a night to be in A Christmas Carol for 25 shows. And it was the greatest experience I'd ever had in Long Island. And I became addicted to theater at a young age. It saved me from being a complete douchebag. I was in Hamlet when I was 12, and I had Hamlet memorized in 7th grade because I spent months with adults every night watching them rehearse it. So there were many blessings. And of course, I was exposed to...
Did they make Shakespeare fun for you? So it wasn't...
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Hamlet at 12, my whole world went from black and white to color. I was doing Gilbert and Sullivan and Moliere plays, and working on Neil Simon plays, and all. And I did stage crew, and I did bit parts, and I would play a waiter in this, or I was tall. I was a tall kid, so I was like the dead bodies in Arsenic and Old Lace when I was 13. And when I was 14, I was doing a production of Romeo and Juliet. I was doing sound, so I was up in the lighting booth, operating all the music the entire time, and it was amazing to see Romeo and Juliet every night for 3 months of my life, just memorize it, and really appreciate that play. And after opening night, we were up in the booth, and everyone was celebrating, and someone lit up a joint. And I was 14, and it was right in front of me. I had never encountered the smell before. And I was just so aware that up until that moment, the word pungent hadn't meant anything to me. But that same production, we had a cast party. And this is my real first true memory of cannabis encounter. I'm 14 years old, and one of the actresses came up to me. She was a very maternal type in her 50s, and she came up to me and she leaned down, and we were at the cast party, and it's all adults and everyone's drinking, and and I'm like the little kid that gets to go there and sit with his Coke in the corner and people talk. I did stage crew; they all knew me, and this actress came over to me and leaned over, and very mom-like, and just looked me right in the eye and said, "John, I'm going to roll a marijuana cigarette in the kitchen right now, and I want to make sure that you're comfortable with that." And it was the 80s, and I was a teen. I was in middle school. I mean, and to me, it was like, what could I say? But yeah, that's fine. Just be as cool as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And I sat there and watched this woman who I loved, who had driven me home from so many productions, who was such a professional, who was so brilliant and creative and kind. And I watched this woman roll a joint from the next room in the kitchen, and she rolled them for everybody that night at the party. And I silently came to understand that a lot of what my government was telling me was well-intentioned and not correct. And it was a very positive awakening to that, long before I learned the actual roots of the drug war.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's
I've never been asked that question, by the way.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm
I've never been asked that
surprised,
question.
especially because early on you were very supportive of decriminalization. So I'm surprised nobody's ever
Oh, I
asked
always
you.
have been. Always have been. Yeah. I mean, it's outrageous, and if you had told me, I mean, Washington grew hemp at Mount Vernon.
Yep.
And I once went to an exhibition at the Huntington Library in Los Angeles when I lived in LA. They had an exhibition of George Washington's artifacts, like actual stuff he'd owned.
Yeah.
And I went to check it. My dad was a history teacher. I went to check it out. And in his surveyor's diary, it's open to the page where he says he went to check in his own handwriting
Hmm.
that he went to check on the hemp plants and he didn't separate them in time. So what do we know about hemp plants? For those who've had the experience in growing, the expression, if it has balls, cut them off.
Yep.
If you don't separate them, they will pollinate each other and not be able to get the flowery top part of the plant. And hemp was part of our nation's heritage. The first colonial printing press, founded by Ben Franklin, used hemp paper. I'm not saying Ben smoked any.
Yeah.
I'm sure lots of sober guys fly kites in thunderstorms, but back then, everyone knew if you smoked the flowery top part of the plant, exactly what it would do. It was used as a painkiller in colonial times. Back then, the biggest drug problem was the same as now, alcohol.
Yeah.
And as you know, and as your listeners know, it wasn't made illegal in this country till the 1930s, and the American Medical Association protested. I'm sure your audience knows all of this history. But for me, it was really, really powerful. Jefferson helped smuggle rare hemp seeds out of China. I like to say it was as American as apple pie, and they knew if you smoked the top of it, you'd want to eat a lot of apple pie.
Yeah.
But no one ever thought, hey, this is a great way to persecute Black people until jazz got popular
Well,
with white
yeah.
kids.
Yeah. Anytime there's going to be crossover and people are going to see commonalities and be attracted to one another, you're going to have somebody, throwing a wrench in the mix. And so that's a perfect way to do it. And then, of course, you got the additional thing with the economics of the whole situation. Because could you imagine if we had been allowed to use it industrially and if all this stuff hadn't happened, what our environment would be like now?
We were, right? With the ropes on the Mayflower. I mean, the country was founded when it was used industrially. You could pay your taxes in hemp for over 200 years in this country's history. And again, it's, legalized cannabis is the conservative point of view. It's only been criminalized for a very short amount of time. And for me, as a kid raised mega Jesus freak, it was always an intensely moral issue. The entire drug war has always been an intensely moral issue for me. And some of the most keen critics of the drug war I've ever heard have actually been clergy people and religious folk. And when you look at the fact that Jesus in the Bible is the leading cause of alcohol at parties, and then you've got this flower that God has seen fit to make grow all over the world.
Right.
And only one species has decided it's a problem, and it's historically only the last 90 years. It was weaponized. I mean, God's gift was weaponized against God's children, and it's a really powerful Christian argument against cannabis criminalization. And if you had told me in the 90s that we'd see it end, that we'd see people stop going to jail for weed, I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't have believed we'd see a Black president or marriage equality either. So, I mean, I use all of the states that are decriminalizing as proof that economically we might be getting worse, but humans are getting kinder and smarter in so many ways. And we are leading the government.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like with all the weirdness that we're seeing in the world today, it's almost the last gasps, the last grasps of trying to have that kind of power through manipulation and hatred, because we're all starting to realize that we're much closer and more alike than we could ever know. Well,
that's all of Trumpism is the last dying gasp of the shittiest parts of 20th century white supremacy. In the end of the horror movie, when they finally killed the monster and everyone relaxes and wow, okay, we're safe. And then the monster rises from the dead one last time, and it's the quiet library mousy girl who picks up the gun, and you see that it's Betty who shot, like there's always that one last scare after the clock. It's alive one last time. That's Trumpism. That's the 20th century is over, but the most corrosive white supremacist, patriarchal, oligarchical shithead part of the 20th century came back for one last post-climax jump scare. And it's scary how catchy it is. But again, it's never a surprise to me that and my book is a lot about this, how Trump is able to get the Christians on his side. The media keeps saying, how can the Christian people go for this agenda? The entire history of organized Christianity, ever since the Roman Empire, murdered the guy and then took over his startup, the whole history has been people using Jesus for power.
Yeah.
Once they get the power, they do the opposite of everything Jesus says. And as soon as you point that out, they scream persecution. And that's the 1700-year grift of authoritarian Christianity.
Yeah, it's kind of it's like emotional manipulation. It's I remember.
Oh, it's spiritual manipulation.
It totally is. And I feel like a lot of this really started up like right after President Obama was elected, because I was working in civil rights back then, and I got the day off to watch him being sworn in and everything. And I remember talking to one of my aunts about leaving corporate and going to work in civil rights, and she told me, good deeds don't get you to heaven, Sarah. Prayer does. And I just looked at her and said, Cheryl, that's the most fucked up thing I've ever heard. But I think
literally the opposite of what Jesus says, by the way. It's literally the opposite of it. That's what St. Paul says. And conservatives are suckered into believing St. Paul is Jesus. Jesus gives the criteria for getting to heaven, and it's very narrow, and it's got nothing to do with what you believe.
Yeah. And you don't do good things to get something in return. It's crazy. But, it's the interesting thing with that.
And yet that's mutual care. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's mutual care. If you do good things for others and the expectation is they'll do it back to you, and we're all committed to a society where everyone's basic needs are met, then it is good. It's mutual care, and it makes sense. It's the only system that's ever actually worked among humans, is looking out for each other. And it's what Jesus does in Matthew 25. He says the week he's murdered, 2 days before they arrest him, the parable of the goats and the sheep, the judgment of nations. He says, I'll tell you who's going to heaven. At the end of the world, I'm going to be judging who goes and who doesn't. And the Son of Man will gather individuals and nations. That's very important. And he's going to judge individuals and nations on 4 criteria. Did you take care of the poor? Did you take care of the sick? Did you welcome the stranger? And were you kind to those in prison? And that's it. This Jesus doesn't care about how well you follow the law, how much money you gave to your church, what God you prayed to, what religion you believed in, what your nationality was, how loudly you screamed at women outside clinics. Take care of the poor, take care of the sick, welcome the stranger, kind to prisoners. That's heaven or hell. That he says it right there. And you'll never see a conservative Christian organization quote Jesus or Matthew 25.
No.
It doesn't serve them.
No. And a lot of these conservative churches have actually been identified as hate groups. I know, some of my family has belonged to one. And my mother, talking to her about it, she doesn't, but she says, well, I don't want to speak ill of the church. I'm like, Mom, that's not a church. That's a wolf in sheep's clothing. They're placing themselves there so that you feel this way as a devout Christian, that you can't say anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's the essence of fundamentalism too. That's all the world's religions. When folks say, when our atheist and agnostic loved ones say, hey, religion's responsible for all the oppression of women and all the violence and all the homophobia and the war. And I get why people feel that way. You look at Christianity's rap sheet and it's like, oh my God, yeah, it's like a violent gang for tax fraud. But the actual thing is, it's the fundamentalist wings of all the religions.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the liberal or moderate Muslims causing these problems. It's not the liberal and moderate Jews, not the liberal and moderate or even the nice conservative Christians. It's the far right wing, extreme conservative fundamentalists of all the world's religions, Hinduism, Judaism. The world's majority of Christians, Jews, and Muslims are getting along just fine right now, all around the world, going to school together, making families together, forming businesses, having communities together. It's the right-wing douchebags of all the religions that get all the bad press and turn everyone off to the idea of faith. You can't mistake faith or spirituality with organized religion, because organized religion is always run by men, and men tend to be douchebags. So, here's the 5 things, right? The more to the right your religion is, the more far right conservative, doesn't matter what the religion, Hindu, women are always second-class citizens. All the great religions, the more conservative the wing is, God loves everyone, but he likes men more, right? Always. Number 2, the sex hang-ups. If sex isn't for procreation, if women or gay men are enjoying sex, it's evil, right? There's
Right.
always the sex prohibitions. Jesus's only hangups about sex are don't dump your wife and don't get divorced unless your wife cheats on you. Those are the only sexual rules Jesus ever lays out. So that's how they control you with guilt, and they control women by weaponizing their bodies. Number 3, fundamentalists of all religions believe violence is okay if my side does it, because we're on the one side of the true God, and God's not going to mind because we're the right ones. We're the ones he likes. So we're allowed to violate our holy book's teachings to kill other people because God signs off on it. And it's logical. Number 4, the fundamentalists always focus on punishment and never healing. And number 5, they always have the persecution narrative. Always this bullshit about we've been victimized, so we get to be bullies to other people. Those 5 traits unite them all. And I would say that right-wing Christians have more in common with right-wing Muslims than they do with liberal or moderate Christians. I wrote this book because these people don't follow Jesus. They use him.
Yeah.
It's a fraud. It's a scam going back to the Roman Empire. There's the actual Jesus following people all through history who follow his teachings and usually get bumped off. But the ones in power tend to get power by talking a good game and then doing the opposite of everything he said. And cannabis prohibition is a perfect example of that. It's got nothing to do with anything in the Gospels. Again, Jesus ain't anti-alcohol. It was finally there, a painkiller. It was always around. And then it was weaponized to brutalize one ethnic group.
Yeah.
For 90 years.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing time right now.
It is. And I find that because a lot of people will say, with Planted, it's a cannabis podcast, but really what we're talking about is digging into the fact that cannabis is kind of a macro micro thing. It's like, it really shows you that not all things that are illegal are bad, and not all things that are legal are necessarily good. And that, if you don't like the way things are going, you better get active, because your voice matters a lot more than you could ever think it does. But I mean, going back to the religion thing, I grew up.
I had to think a lot before doing your show, by the way. I was like, how am I going to filter all this through cannabis? But yeah, well, no, I mean, I didn't want to be a complete dope, but yeah, I mean, it's true. And what I like is that I don't even think your show is necessarily pro-cannabis. Your show is pro-freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not saying everyone should do cannabis. Your show is pro-choice, pro-freedom, pro-health. I mean, there are some people who probably shouldn't, but
absolutely,
boy, it would make the baseball games a lot better if they were doing that instead of drinking beer. My God, it would be more pleasant.
100%. No. I mean, when I was doing a lot of classes and teaching, the public about cannabis, one of the biggest things I would say was, even though we create our own endogenous cannabinoids, not all of us are able to tolerate phytocannabinoids. And guess what? That's okay. But don't take away somebody else's right to be able to do it. That's the thing. Still smoking joints? Okay, we need to talk. If you love cannabis but you're still lighting it, let's look at what's actually happening. When you burn flower, you're creating smoke. And that smoke contains harmful compounds like tar, soot, benzene, and formaldehyde. In fact, almost 200 different compounds have been detected in joint smoke. So how do we know this? PAX decided to study it. In controlled lab testing, they compared joint smoke to vapor from their devices, using the same flower under the same conditions, and measured 16 key harmful compounds. The result is pretty striking. Vaporization reduced those compounds by more than 95%, because when you heat cannabis instead of burning it, you change what you inhale. You still get cannabinoids and flavor, just without all the extra stuff that comes from smoke. This isn't about judgment, it's about information. If you want to learn more, go to pax.com/science. PAX is setting higher standards so you can smoke less smoke. And for Planted listeners, get 20% off at pax.com with code PLANTED20.
Yeah, exactly right. We talk a good game about freedom and liberty in this country. And it's really nice to see people actually start to take those words seriously. And it's an amazing time to be alive. I made a film for PBS a dozen years ago where I spent so much time in prisons talking with guys who had done, 40 years for possession of heroin, in the 70s, still in jail. Guys who'd done a decade for cannabis possession. I mean, this was done as a war against poor people. This was done the 100%. Same reason. I mean, at least with seatbelt laws, they did seatbelt laws so they can pull you over anytime, right? A lot of guys were harassed, but seatbelt laws at least saved lives. This was literally a painkiller from pre-colonial days that God sees fit to grow around the world. And of course, children shouldn't be smoking it. I got no problem with people saying kids don't smoke weed, and that's going to be a whole new challenge in the era of flavored vape pens. But to me, it's always been about the criminalization of a consensual crime. That there were no victims. It's a plant that grew here. Washington and Jefferson grew it themselves. And I just feel like you've done so much to educate people, and I've learned from watching your show.
Thank you.
Quite a bit.
Thank you. Well, I feel like, you're right on it. I think if people would worry more about what's going on in their backyards and with their families and whether they're showing up as a good person in the world, we would have way less issues. I mean, I talked about my family on my mother's side being Christian, but my dad was Muslim. And so,
wow.
Yeah. And once, as I got older, I asked him, I said, "Hey, Dad, like, why didn't you didn't raise us speaking Farsi?" He came from Iran in the late 60s. I was like, "And you didn't raise us Muslim. Why was that?" And he's like, "Well, Sarah," and this, I don't always get along with him, but he has these profound moments where I will stop and I'll be like, And he's like, whether you're looking at Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they're the 3 pillars of Abraham. I wanted you raised with a good moral foundation. You could decide what you wanted to do when you got older because, God is everywhere. It's what's in your heart that counts. And heaven and hell is here on earth. So what are you going to make of your life? And that was,
God, you got the whole theology right there.
Totally. Well, I mean, there was a time where I actually thought about going to school for theology. I was raised Lutheran. But then I got turned off with the business of the church. And that was the thing that I was like, I can be spiritual and do my thing and not be a part of that. But I do think that especially for, some people, it's a very rich part of their lives. And I totally appreciate that.
I had the same thoughts too, but I was turned off by the celibacy of my church before I was turned off by the business of my church. I later learned to be turned off by the business of it, but it was the actual celibacy, not based on anything Jesus ever said, that repelled me a bit in the beginning because both my parents had been. My mother had been a nun and my father had been a Franciscan brother. They had both broken a vow of celibacy.
That's right.
I'm so fascinated by the Muslim dad and the Lutheran mom. Were they? I'm guessing they were harmonious, but were they? I'm guessing they were progressive, or were they conservative?
I mean, they were Reagan Republicans, and I got them to vote for Clinton.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was also a different time. There weren't a lot of mixed marriages when I was growing up, and so it was an interesting thing. He loved Christmas. He wasn't a practicing Muslim, and I didn't have a pork chop till I was 30, and I didn't realize why. I wasn't even thinking about it. But bacon, that doesn't count.
Oh, that doesn't. Oh, good to know. Great to know.
It's a don't ask, don't tell pork policy.
But that's the whole thing, right? Like when it comes to belief, it's all what you choose to put on your tray at the great cherry-picking buffet of spirituality. And everyone picks and chooses the parts of their holy books they want to follow.
Yeah.
We all do it. And it's very human. We don't all pick and choose to justify cruelty to groups of people, right? Like Book of Leviticus, shall not lie with a man as with a woman. That's an abomination. So for there, we have 2,000 years of persecuting gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. But it also says in Leviticus 20:10, you got to stone adulterers to death. And I don't see any of these homophobes bringing rocks to Mar-a-Lago. You know what I mean?
No, but they all eat shellfish.
Forbidden, no shellfish, no tattoos. You have to kill children who are gluttons or drunks or who disrespect their parents. You have to stone to death anybody who works on Saturday. My God, all of NASCAR, and it's
God
fine.
forbid.
We all pick and choose. That's very natural. It's when they pick and choose to justify exclusion and cruelty that that you're dealing with a religious group that is completely full of shit. Jesus's whole mission is about humility.
Yeah.
The last shall be first. Servant leadership. Going to the margins, how you treat the lowest. That's what he says. He doesn't just say help the poor. He identifies with the poor. He says how you treat the poor and the immigrant is how you treat me. And he washes his servants' feet. He was not about total right-wing domination of the school board. And it was all about loving your enemies. He was kind to the tax collectors. He was kind to the Roman generals who asked him for help, even though they were occupying his land. These are the people who actually killed him in the end, and he was kind to them. The Samaritans are the one minority you're all allowed to hate, and he commanded us to love the Samaritans and made them the good guys in the stories he would tell. The guy was relentlessly anti-hierarchy and consistently about breaking down these barriers. So if you're believing, if anyone says that they're better than other groups of people because they believe in Jesus, they don't actually believe in Jesus. They got some religious bullshit fed to them, and they haven't read the original book. These people are wrecking our society. They're trying to put their narrow anti-teachings of Jesus version of this religion into our schools, into our government, our social and cultural lives. And it's going to be up to all of us, of every background, every belief system, agnostic brothers and sisters and atheists and Muslims and Jews and all manner of Christians, to beat back the batshit crazy Christians. Because not only are they wrong about things morally and economically, they're wrong about things on a complete New Testament level. They don't fight for Jesus. They use him. And you don't need to believe in walking on water and healing lepers to call that shit out.
No, that's it. And it's funny because before I read your book, I would say, and I remember saying this to my mother and she got really quiet, but I said, if Jesus came back today, they'd kill him again. And then I was reading your book and I was like, whoa, okay. We're like right on the same page with this, because it's I believe the faith is a beautiful thing, but the manipulation, it's almost like when I remember, like, I went back into working retail in my late 30s, early 40s after being in the office for years. And when you're a kid, you're used to being treated like crap when you work at a restaurant or whatever. And then it takes your breath away when you go back as an adult and you realize that somebody has to feel better about themselves by making you feel less than. And this is kind of the tool that we're seeing with religion.
That's it. Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's a great way to manipulate people, especially women.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible, it's like parts of it are like gospel according to Ike Turner.
Oh, geez,
and
no kidding.
The way the Bible has been used to weaponize women's own anatomies against them for thousands of years, using shame to control behavior.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with this brown-skinned Jewish carpenter. It's got everything to do with the patriarchy and how men control people, and religion uses fear to control people. For Jesus, his whole thing is no hierarchies.
Yeah.
The last will be first. Like I said, like, we're all one. You're not better than anybody else. And that's no good for empires. That's no good for the Catholic Church. So for 1,000+ years, most folks are illiterate. You go to church and the priest reads it to you and it's in Latin. So you have no idea what they're saying. And no one actually knows what Jesus said for over 1,000 years, because you have this built-in firewall, right? The priest will tell you what Jesus says. But for over the first 1,000 years of Christianity, you have to hear Jesus's teachings about authority and power filtered through authority and power. They were the gatekeepers. And this continued. My mom used to say that when she was in the convent, they wouldn't allow the nuns to read the Bible. And my dad couldn't believe it, but my mother said, no, they told us in the convent, you go to mass every day, Father reads it for you. This is how they kept people from knowing that Jesus was a revolutionary figure, right? They'll teach you about the miracles and the Son of God, and he healed the dead, and he came back, and he built this church we're in right now, and we're his chosen people.
Right.
But they're not going to tell you what he said about rich people. They're not going to tell you what he said about violence. They're not going to tell you what he said about power and hierarchy and how the lowest have to be prioritized. That blows up their whole scam. So you have all these years of people not knowing. We've only been critically engaging with the actual scripture for about 400 years since the printing press began. And, literacy rates are still catching up with all that. When the Vatican finally had Vatican II in the 60s, and they said, okay, now we want everyone to read the Bible. Everyone should read it. Well, all the nuns started reading it, and they became theologians and professors and experts. And look what happened. The nuns became the fiercest critics of Vatican bullshit and hypocrisy because they actually read the scripture. Once the gatekeepers are out of the way, you realize that organized religion is a system and it can do a lot of good. But you have to measure it against the teaching. If it's Christianity, you got to measure it against the teachings of Jesus. If your church isn't telling you to love your enemy, but they're telling you who your enemy is, you're not really in a church.
No, you're not. You're not. I mean, and why do systems and power confuse obedience with goodness? Why do we do that?
I mean, I think every time I hear someone talk about the commandment, honor thy mother and father, I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, well, look what that did for Mel Gibson. You know, we all want to be good boys and girls.
Right.
We all want to be good kids. And by
Right.
presenting God as a patriarchal figure, even if he's presented sometimes as the angry alcoholic stepgod, obedience can be mistaken for love. And you see that in the Donald Trump movement. It's not loyalty. He
No.
doesn't. Trump demands loyalty. No, loyalty, it goes two ways. Trump's never been loyal to anyone. All these henchmen he's hired who think they're loyal. No, it's obedience. He wants full obedience. Never loyalty, not to his wives, not to his contractors. He hires all these twits because they're going to be easy fall guys, these flunkies that he can just lance like a boil. Oh, as soon as Epstein is sticking to him too hard, well, there goes Pam Bondi. Oh, you got dead people in Minnesota. Well, there goes Kristi Noem. As soon as Iran gets inconvenient for this guy and Netanyahu makes him look bad, Pete Hegseth's going to get blamed for that too.
Totally.
Like, that's the whole. It's all obedience. There's no faith in that. You know what I'm saying? There's just
there
fear.
Isn't. And
when you're using fear to control people, it's a great way to turn an entire generation off from the idea of spirituality. They say the largest growing demographic spiritually are Mormons. Some say it's Islam, and some say it's none of the aboves. But I think it's people who were raised religious and are now calling themselves spiritual because they're so turned off to all this meanness we're talking about.
Yeah, I would be one of those people.
Is that how you describe?
I describe myself as spiritual these days just because it's just the Christianity that I grew up to believe. You just don't see it as much anymore. And I hate to say that. Like I know there, I mean, I had Rick Steves on the show last year. He's a devout Lutheran, and he believes in personal freedoms. And like, even when he talks about like his work with legalization, he's like, I'm not about legalizing cannabis. I'm about free will. I'm about personal liberties. He's like, it is my personal liberty to smoke a joint and stare at a fireplace for 3 hours. And if I get behind the wheel, throw the book at me, but when he became the chair of Normal, he actually, before he accepted it, he sat down with his pastor and talked to him about it, because he's very connected with his church, and he wanted to be perfectly clear with his community what he was doing and why he was doing it. So like when I see someone like that, I'm like,
awesome.
I'm like, okay, there's hope. But maybe it's just the fact that the people who are doing the things that are making religion, I'm not even going to say Christianity, just religion, period, just a really scary, ugly thing, are the ones that are yelling the loudest and just really being the most negative. And that's, and that's off-putting. And so for me, it's like, how do people stay on the good foot as far as religion goes?
So much to unpack from what you just said. I mean, that's brilliant. I applaud Rick Steves for his stance, because Jesus said, I have come to proclaim freedom to the oppressed and to bring release to the prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not advocating for 10-year-olds to smoke a bat one. You're saying, let's stop putting humans in cages to punish them for smoking a flower that God grew on this land thousands of years before Caucasians ever showed up.
Right. And if we're talking
Weed's
about...
been here longer than white people.
That's it. And we talk about, Christians talk about like the strength of the family unit and things like that. When you're putting people in prison for smoking weed or growing it or whatever, you're breaking up families.
Christ's whole movement is about fighting poverty. So, I mean, it's a war on poor people. That's all it's ever been. The war on drugs was always a war on poor people. And I mean, it really began in 1875 in San Francisco. I don't know how into the opium history y'all go on the show, but I mean...
Oh, like with the opium wars?
Yeah, because I mean, back then, the Chinese would import this smokable opium, right? Normal Christian white people did it the wholesome way. They drank it or ate it, but these Chinese smoked it in these heathen opium dens. And they were so afraid of these white young men going into these heathen Chinese opium dens that they passed a law banning imported smokable opium. And this was the first time that they ever did this to regulate behavior, and they put a tax on it, and then they banned it. First, the tax, they'd never done a tax to control behavior. Taxes were to raise money,
right,
not to discourage things. So then they banned it. And then, of course, you have prohibition. And then what happens? Cops become crooked. Gang violence breaks out. The underworld flourishes. You've got an underground economy. The drug war, as we know it, begins. And it began because of racism in that liberal bastion of San Francisco. And it led us to directly where we are now. And it's always been about race. And it's always been a war on poor people. I did stand up for the troops in Honduras and El Salvador a little while back. And we have military bases in Honduras and El Salvador because we still have the drug war going on. That's why we have bases there. And our Air Force base in Honduras is amazing because it was made by Ronald Reagan of wood in the 80s. And when I went there, it was being eaten by termites. And they were trying to deal with the termite problem. And I couldn't believe the metaphor that these things that were built by Reagan for this drug war to put people in jail for coke were still there, and like literally nature was having its way with the infrastructure of it. And so we see it now. I mean, look at how they've been murdering brown people in fishing boats off the coast of Venezuela. First they lied and said it was because of fentanyl.
Yeah.
That was their Christian nationalist Pete Hegseth's justification. It's okay because they're bringing fentanyl from Venezuela to America in little boats. No fentanyl comes from Colombia, so then it became cocaine. They're bringing cocaine here in little boats. And then we invaded and took their oil. And now you don't hear them talking about fentanyl from Colombia on little fishing, but they're still blowing people up and killing them.
Right.
But they're not afraid of it anymore. And that's always been the racket. In many cases, the drug war is just used as a war on poor people or brown people or other populations who have resources we want.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even with the, war on drugs during Reagan, I mean, Iran-Contra, hello.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, manipulation.
Arguably the greatest, much greater scandal than Watergate. I mean, up until the Iraq War, that was the greatest scandal of my lifetime. We were arming both sides of the Iran-Iraq war.
Yeah.
Why would they hate us? I don't know. Arming both sides of the same war. Yeah.
I wonder.
To illegally fund the Contra terrorists in Central America. And they lied about everything. And they all walked away clean. And Bill Clinton couldn't pull off one lousy blowjob. But
no.
It seems quaint now with what the corruption we're seeing now is like nothing we've ever seen. And it's so depressing to see that, it's the Christians who are backing, the alleged Christians who are backing it up. But again, it's nothing new.
No.
The whole history of Christianity has been authoritarianism, wrapping itself up in the cross and using churchy talk and words like sacred or whatever to use Jesus-y sounding language to get people to do the opposite of Jesus.
Yeah.
And, the televangelists nailed it in the late 70s. They had been segregationists. Jerry Falwell had been a segregationist, built whites-only schools. That collapsed. They spent the 70s trying to keep segregation alive in college campuses.
Mm-hmm.
Their biggest issue was that Jimmy Carter wanted to take away tax-exempt statuses from schools that still had segregation. That didn't test well. By the end of the 70s, they realized this abortion thing. When Roe v. Wade was decided, nobody cared. It was a Catholic thing. No one cared. The Southern Baptist Convention affirmed a woman's right to choose a year after Roe v. Wade. It was not controversial. But when they realized they could use this to manipulate the vote, they changed our entire country and they changed Christianity. And for 45 years now, Christianity has been defined by criminalizing abortion, which the Bible never mentions. Never. Jesus is against the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
More than once. They don't listen to Jesus. God asserts in Exodus 21 that a fetus is property. And a woman's life has more value than a fetus in his eye. That's why abortions are legal and free in Israel right now. But our conservative friends aren't told this bit of information. It's the same way they lied to us about cannabis for all these years.
Yeah.
In Numbers chapter 5, God gives abortion tips if your wife is pregnant by another man. Like they just make it up. And so what they did was, and this is at the rise of the drug war, they got the followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus ever talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. That's the racket. That's how they do it. And they never talk about helping the poor.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all. No, well, and then, what about after the babies are born? So
Exactly.
we, our educational systems are being broken down. They're trying to get rid of programs that feed children at schools. How they're, our programs to help people get back on their feet, they're eroding. I mean, those programs are more Christian than anything that they're bringing up.
Exactly. But look what they did to USAID.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, for years, Sarah, I said, say what you want about Trump. George W. Bush still has a higher body count. I don't know if I can say that anymore. Donald Trump and Elon Musk's body count in the second term is already in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
From the aid cut from USAID, the soft power that made people don't like us around the world because of our president. They like us because we save lives and preserve infrastructure and keep people from drifting to terrorists who promise them other things. And we pulled AIDS medication. We pulled food. Hundreds of thousands of people have already died. They've aborted people by the hundreds of thousands already.
Yeah.
And yet Trump was always able to seduce the Christians. And he didn't do it by promising to do anything Jesus said. He promised to put them first. You're under siege. You're under siege. The persecution narrative, right? We're white Christians. We're the largest group in the country. We control all branches of government. We control business. We control media, and we're under siege. And Trump kept saying, I'll put you first. Not humility, not I'll do what Christ commands.
No.
You're better than other people.
Well, and that's how
he got him.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, and that's how we got racism, because it was, you might be poor, but you're not black, so you're better than they are. And exactly I've never seen
always a hierarchy.
Yeah, it is
always
a hierarchy.
Anti-Jesus hierarchy. There's always got to be someone who's worse than you and someone you're better than. And that's how you know it's not anything Jesus talked about.
No, why not just be a good person, stay in your lane, work hard,
There's
be
no
part of
money
your
there.
community.
There's no money there. Look at the 10 Commandments and look at the Sermon on the Mount. The 10 Commandments is black and white. Don't do this shit. Don't do this shit. Don't do this shit. Don't do this shit. Very easy to understand.
Yeah.
You put that up in school so 7-year-olds don't covet their neighbor's wife. Very easy to understand.
Well, they
Sermon
need to be
told. Sermon on the Mount is chaos. Sermon on the Mount is the last shall be first. Sermon on the Mount is turn the other cheek if someone hurts you.
Yeah.
Sermon on the Mount is if they ask you to go a mile, go another mile. It's unrestrained, radical love. It's chaos. You can't control people with that. And that's the point of it. Jesus does not oppose the Roman Empire by shaking his fist and making angry posts. He comes out and doesn't even acknowledge the empire. Says there's a whole other kingdom. And, the whole, if someone asks you to go a mile, go the second mile. Like, we're not taught as kids. They lived in a police state.
Yeah.
They lived under imperial occupation where guys were crucified on the side of the road to scare you into behaving. That's the world Jesus grew up in. And some people collaborated. Some people did violent rebellion. Some people pretended it wasn't going on. And Jesus showed up and healed people and just said, no, they're not the real kingdom. The kingdom of God's within you. Satan offers him the world. He says no. They offer to make him king after the loaves and fishes. Jesus says no kings before it's even trendy. He's literally anti-power.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're going to be nonviolent and not recognize the state, they don't know what to do with that. If you're violent, they know how to put you down. But Jesus, half of what he did was satire and nonviolent political protest. And he did it in a way that confounded Rome. And then, of course, they killed him, but that's a whole other matter. I mean, after they kill him 300 years later, they take over the operation of the guy they killed. And suddenly it all becomes about power. And it's no longer about Christian calling to help the less fortunate. Now it's about Christian identity.
Right. And the Gnostics,
us against them.
Yeah, in the Gnostics, they went after them because they were seeking knowledge. They were actually looking to empower in very much the way Christ was.
That's it. I mean, but this is how they went from being a persecuted sect to being an imperial religion that could persecute other people. Yeah. Now they got to feed people to the lions, and they persecuted Jews and pagans. And I mean, the Crusades, which Pete Hegseth and this government loves so much, it wasn't just an incredible military failure. It was nonstop blasphemy. Again, we're going to go and kill pagans and Jews and Muslims and even Christians. They sacked Constantinople and killed Christians too.
Yeah.
But they said we're going to, and it's always, we're going to do the opposite of Jesus for Jesus. We're going to reclaim the Holy Land and slaughter all these people for Christ. And that's how you always know it's a racket. That's Columbus. We're going to torture these people and enslave them and cut off their fucking hands if they don't bring me enough gold tribute every month. But we're going to put up crosses and we're going to convert them to Jesus and save their souls. That was the rationale for slavery. Do the opposite of Jesus for Jesus.
Right.
And that was with the Indians in the residential schools. You got to Christianize them. Kill the Indian, save the man. Do the opposite of Jesus for Jesus. And being saved didn't save anybody.
No.
It was all blasphemy and murder. So I'm not shocked when people despise religion. I get it. But you look what's happening now. What's turning people off to religion? Young people aren't leaving because of Jesus or God or Noah's Ark or Santa Claus.
Fascism.
They're leaving because of hate and cruelty and hypocrisy and meanness and this anti-gay bullshit. And kids today have grown up with Muslim classmates, and they know gay kids, and they know Latino kids, and they know black kids. And this shit's not going to wash as easily in the 21st century. There's still plenty that want a homogenized white America, and they're fucking stupid, and they're being marginalized. But as the church membership gets smaller, the fringe gets bigger.
Mm-hmm.
As religious participation drops, we went below 50% for the first time in 2022. The percentage of Christians who think we were founded as a Christian nation is getting bigger.
Like and that's not true.
Right, it's not. But this is what's happening with religion. The Republican Party, 20 years ago, it was a conservative party with a white nationalist fringe. Now it's a white nationalist party with a conservative fringe. And I fear we're seeing this happen with Christianity as well. And the challenge to American Christianity is, are we going to make the same mistake German Christianity made 90 years ago and throw out everything this brown-skinned Jew said because authoritarian rule feels so good? I happen to believe the teachings of Jesus might be the only thing that'll save America, because caring for the poor is good economics.
It is. It is. I never thought I'd see a day where Dick Cheney looked downright cuddly.
You know, you're going to have to try a little harder to pull me into bed on that one. God bless Dick Cheney. God bless Liz Cheney. I think it's great that they were right about one thing in their life. You know,
right.
Mike Pence is going to be hailed as a great statesman in all the history books because one time in his entire life,
right.
He did the right thing once. And God bless Dick Cheney for what he did, but he didn't do nearly enough of what he could have done. And
Absolutely
Dick Cheney never sought forgiveness. Dick Cheney enabled Trump. He enabled all of this, and so did the Bush family, and all of these Republicans that don't speak out about this. They don't care about the Republican brand any more than they care about Christianity.
No, well, Trump is a symptom of a much bigger problem.
Yeah, and a problem that's always existed in America. And it's the wolf you don't want to feed. It's the selfishness. It's the arrogance. It's everything foreigners hate about America. The entitlement, the brutality, the racism, the self-righteousness, the stupidity. I mean, it's like everything that they hate about Americans embodied in this one guy. And he's going to die soon. And the whole question is going to be, what's going to happen with his minions? And, you know, more and more people are going to be realizing that they were hoodwinked and bamboozled and led astray. And I think the hardest part is going to be not, you know, greeting any emotional growth with smug liberal I told you so's. Because when this guy dies and the NDAs come out, I mean, all those NDAs are going to heaven. He's not, but we're going to learn a lot of evil shit he did. A lot of women are going to be able to speak once he's dead. Going to be a lot of gag orders lifted, and I mean, Michael Wolff is going to write 19 books the week this guy dies, and the gas prices have only begun to hurt us. So as people realize they have been sucked into this cult, it's going to be really interesting to see how we handle that and how we accept them. And my hope is that young people will have an moral and intellectual backlash to all of this, that young people who grew up without this kind of 20th century bullshit will just want to have a society based on decency and intelligence. And I think if the church wants to save itself, you know, like fighting for justice and racial justice and seeking to help with poverty and get health care to everybody and caring about the earth and being good stewards of our climate, fighting for all manner of economic justice. These are all ideas that are really popular with young people that align really nicely with the teachings of Jesus. And if the church wants to survive, they're going to go back to what that guy said. Look at the last two popes. These last two popes aren't talking about birth control and gay and sex. They're bringing it back to poverty and healthcare and anti-war. And that's going to scare off the awful people. But that's the only way Christianity can survive.
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the things that really surprised me with the last election. I was at a conference in Missouri during the election. What a place to be. But, you know,
wow.
What I heard talking to people who were in their 20s was that a lot of their friends didn't vote. They just said, burn it all down. We don't like any of it.
Yeah.
And that frightened
That's what the
me.
billionaires want. That's what the oligarchs want. They're both sides are the same,
Yeah.
Both sides are the same. And I'll be the first I've never been a Democrat, but and I never will be. But I think this administration has proved no, both sides aren't the same. And the Democrats who run on accountability, who run on hands-on Bibles, who run on scaring these fascists back into their hole for another 90 years, they're the ones who are going to make the most in the almighty campaign donations and votes. The ones who talk about let's get along with them again, and they're back. Those Democrats are going nowhere. People need to see accountability because we got to scare these racists back into the woods.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we're seeing, even people always say that they assume that in the cannabis industry everybody's liberal. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. And with the stuff that's going on with legalization,
it used to be maybe, but not for a long, not since libertarians discovered it.
Well, that's it. And actually, in the early 80s, the Republicans were actually more towards legalization than the Democrats. Did you know that?
Some were, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
some
I mean, go look at the 1980 presidential debates between Ronald Reagan and George Bush. They're both competing to see who's more compassionate to undocumented immigrants. I mean, Reagan thought that's how you win, because power is the only thing that matters.
Right.
And if power is the only thing that matters, your belief system is subordinate to that. So Reagan, talked about Jimmy Carter's IRS more than he talked about abortion. Reagan was very much a white supremacist, but Reagan and Bush were both saying, oh, I'm going to look out for these people. Reagan gave amnesty to millions. I mean, and again, now Reagan fought for open borders. He said, we should have open borders so they can come here and work. And when they're done, they go back. Reagan said it. And then, of course, Muslims weren't testing so well with right-wing focus groups, and they needed some other group to scapegoat, because that's how fascism operates. The charismatic leader shows up, any society, any religion, any decade, and says, you know who your problem is? You know who's causing your problems? It's this powerless minority group. They're an existential threat to our entire way of life. These Jews, these Italian immigrants coming over on the boat, these illegals, they're a threat to our way of life. These transgender kids want to play sports. They're a threat to our way of life, and only I can keep you safe. And that's fascism 101. That's punching down. That's what sucks in comedy, and it sucks in Christianity. But that's how they do it. And real Christians are supposed to reject all that shit. And they do. Like, I'm sorry for all the monologues I've done about Christianity on your show, but
no.
Like,
I'm
you look at the whole
fascinated by
history
it.
of this religion, right? Like you got the Crusades, and they're slaughtering people. And the church is taken over, and it's the cross has become branding for violence. This symbol of death penalty they used, the first original innocent brown-skinned man executed by the state. And the symbol of his execution becomes a brand for warfare by the same people who fucking killed him. And then St. Francis of Assisi quits the Crusades and preaches nonviolence and walks unarmed through a war zone to host peace talks with a Muslim sultan. The real Christians prove the fake Christians are fake. Yeah. You got the doctrine of discovery, and the Pope says, go and rape the lands and take what you want and convert them. And they're not real people. The land belongs to us because we're Christian, and God wants us to take their land for God. So Columbus is slaughtering people and torturing them and raping them and cutting hands off of children in the shadow of the cross. And it's a Catholic priest, Bartolomeo de las Casas, priest on his third voyage, who writes to the Queen and protests what's going on in this abuse and enslavement of the Taino people, and becomes a radical. The first act of protest in this hemisphere by a white person. And it's against Columbus, and it's a Catholic priest, because back then they knew this was fucked up.
Right.
They'll say, oh, no, people didn't know when Columbus says, no, the Catholic priest told the truth, and Columbus was finally dragged back in chains. You got slavery propped up in this country by the Bible, and it's the Christ followers like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and the Quakers who used the Jesus talk against the abolitionist movement was driven by actual Christians. Hitler becomes the greatest Christian nationalist of all time. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a theologian who actually had studied in America and attended the Black church and was so inspired as a German at the resilience and grace of African-American Christians with all the suffering and oppression, he goes back transformed, and he gives his life to protect his Jewish brothers and sisters and tries to take out Hitler. The industrialists use Christianity, and they oppose having a child labor laws. And you got Dorothy Day and the Catholic worker movement using the Bible to shame these robber barons. And then Dr. King and segregation, our apartheid, he's using the Jesus quotes against them. Think about how many of us have talked parents and grandparents out of so much homophobia.
Yeah.
There's this incredible tradition of Christian activism, but it's always in resistance to Christian authoritarian douchebags. Always. There's the fake ones and the real ones, and the real ones show you that the fakes are fake.
Yeah, they do. They do. I just wish more people saw it, but I think they get so caught up in their own story and their own fear. I feel like if we had people, I mean, and I know this is a lofty thing because not everyone can afford to do this, but if people were able to travel to other places to meet people who are different than them and to have connections with them and to understand that, I think it would change so much. It's just
it'd be an economic catastrophe for oligarchs if that happened.
It would be,
because
and that's the thing.
What did Mark Twain say? Travel is fatal to prejudice.
Yeah, it is. It is, and I mean, and Rick Steves kind of says stuff like that too, because he's like, get out there, meet people who are different than you, check out places that are different than you, because
it's true.
We fear what we don't understand. And
I was raised in the South and in New York. I was half Southern, half Brooklyn, and I grew up hearing New York people talk about rednecks and hearing Southern people talk about Yankees. And I grew up with a front row seat to how people with a lot in common were encouraged by their cultures to hate each other. Divide and conquer is how it works. If these right-wing dudes, if these bro dudes realize that they have more in common with Black working class people, if these MAGA guys realize that they have more in common spiritually and hard work ethic wise with the undocumented immigrants they've been programmed to hate than they have in common with billionaires, you'd see real change. They need us hating each other. And the culture war has always been the great way to do it. Trans kids want to play sports. All right, well, we should protect the integrity of girls' sports. But the reality is they always find a minority to punch down on. And real men are supposed to be strong for marginalized groups, not lead the gang to beat up on them. Real men protect those who are weaker. And that's the message the Democratic Party has to convey, compassion and guts, because that's what's manly, not being a fucking bully. And that's what's Christian. And, I'd love to see that happen. And I think we're primed for it to happen, because I just think, just like Westboro Baptist Church turned so many people off to homophobia, so many Christians were uncomfortable with gay marriage, but they saw Westboro Baptist Church protesting at military funerals and like, well, I don't want to be on the same side as those assholes. Right. I'm hoping that Donald Trump is going to lead to a lot of good, because people will want to reject this way of thinking and this way of treating others.
I hope so too. I really do. I hope that I have a lot of hope for our youth, the younger generation, just because, like, going back to what we were talking about earlier, they've been exposed to so many more different people, maybe even not so much in real life, like in person, but, social media and the internet have their pros and cons. But one of the things I think that's really positive is it's able to give people insight into other people's lives remotely and to make some connections. I mean, it can do the opposite too. We've seen the manipulation through it, but I feel like people are just much more open. I mean, growing up, I went to high school in the late 80s, early 90s. And I just remember, like, my friends who came out later in life, like how painful it was for them going through high school, not being able to be their true selves. And I feel like we're seeing more of a call towards authenticity, being able to be yourself. Now, the big thing is people understanding that this hatred makes a very small group of people in our world very powerful and rich. And that's all it's about.
Do you think that our right-wing brothers and sisters can be taught that message? Do you think they can figure that out in the matrix, that Elon Musk isn't actually fighting for them?
Well, I think if they let it go, they will, and it'll be too late.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It's like when we see these stories about people who voted in this election for Trump, and now they're upset that either they're being deported or somebody they love is being deported, or a family member isn't getting health care, and they're like, I thought he would take care of us. Maybe this is that eye-opening lesson that they need. And, I still feel compassion, because I'm just like, I know some people will be like, well, too bad they made the choice. But it's like, well, is it a bad apple or is it a bad barrel?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the temptation. Well, I was enjoying it when he was inflicting suffering on other people. Mm-hmm. I saw Mike Lee complaining that Pete Hegseth had declared that Mormonism wasn't Christianity, and it's like, oh, I voted for this agenda to persecute other religious minorities, not mine. But it's true. Your perspective is right. No one's raised to no one's born a bigot. No
No.
baby comes out thinking they're superior to other babies because of their religion. No baby thinks that he deserves more pay than a female baby. All of this stuff is taught to us. And growth is painful, and in many cases generational. But again, I can't believe how far we've come. You talk to gay kids now, you talk to any kids now, and they won't believe how homophobic things were when we were kids.
Oh, yeah.
And that just tells me that in 20 years, they're not going to believe how transphobic we were back in the 20s, when transgender folks have become so much more normalized and woven into culture because of the brave pioneers getting the shit kicked out of them now. In 20 years, kids are going to be shocked we were so transphobic back in the day. And we're not getting better economically yet. We're not really getting serious about getting big money out of politics, but that's a system. In terms of human kindness, I'm not an optimist. I'm a recovering cynic. And I've seen so much evidence that humans are becoming kinder. Yes, these douchebags make it seem the other way. I always say that, like, America's an old couch and Trump is a black light. That hate was always there, that nastiness, and now it's just shining and glowing bright. But look at marriage equality. Look at having a black president. Like, look at all the ways that the people did lead and the leaders have followed. So I just think we are hardwired to be more open-hearted and open-minded. And some of us are culturally encouraged to slow down on that. But what I witnessed as a teenager in the 80s and during AIDS protests and the AIDS crisis, it's still the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Like, gay people were an oppressed minority in every minority. And 20,000 men had to die before the president even said the name of the disease out loud. And they stopped waiting, and they began having obnoxious protests and doing things with their straight allies and making a lot of noise. And it made me uncomfortable as a kid. But soon I understood it, and I realized, oh no, they're on the side of Jesus. These lunatics, these crazy gay protesters, they're actually the ones who are talking about everything Jesus talked about. And I've been trained by my church to think they're the opposite.
Right.
And what did we witness from all of the activism? We had marriage equality for gay people in one generation, the swiftest advancement of human rights for any minority in the history of our species. I mean, and again, gay people are oppressed minority in all the minorities. And within one generation, Barack Obama, in a re-election battle, came out for a marriage equality because he knew the American people were on that side. We'd gotten there.
They were ready for it. And also, when you look
how
at
much better we got, look how much kinder we got. And it happened because of a plague. And America helped lead the way morally.
And because of that plague also is the reason that we're looking at legalization of cannabis right now, because
exactly right. Same thing.
Yeah. People wanted to get medicine to the people that they love so that they could eat, so that they could live. And, there's just so much that's come out of, with our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, what they've done to make the world not just better for them, but for the rest of us too, with the policies that they've helped push.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, and look how easy it is now. Like, I don't think they're not going to be able to get away with undoing Obergefell. They're not going to get away with undoing marriage equality. They want to. They're spending money to make it happen. Clarence Thomas would love it, but no, we the people won't do it. It would be like going back to segregation. They took away abortion rights, and we've already seen how profoundly un-Christ-like that was. They drove the maternal mortality rate up in this country because now there's dead babies now because doctors can't do D&Cs, and so women are forced to give birth to babies that have no chance of survival. So it's the people who were anti-Roe v. Wade who wound up being the baby killers.
Yeah.
And it's all over something Jesus never mentions.
Right.
That's the racket. And the more people know it, you don't have to believe in the Bible as literal fact to use this information when you deal with these people, because we have to delegitimize their piety. If we don't call these people out as fake Christians, then they frame the whole religion. They frame what religion is, and we allow them to put MLK in the same basket as the KKK. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's Christian? Okay, so completely different, but they both use the Bible. They both claim moral authority from the Bible. They both say they're following Jesus, and yet there's no way you can say that Dr. King and the Klan are equal representations of the same thing. One honors the text and one gives the text the finger but uses it.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to call these people out, and Christians have to call out these fakes as well. We have to be, the most devout grandma has to be able to stand up there and say, I'm sorry, but Columbus, Hitler, and Trump are fake fucking Christians.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
Well, I think in many ways it has to come from the Christians.
Has to.
You know,
just like the end of rape has to come from the men.
That's right. That's right.
Right? Like enforcing Me Too has to come from the men.
Yeah.
You know, like of course it has to be, and that's growth. And
yeah, it doesn't.
I think we'll get there. I think men want to be the good guys. The problem is we're all human, and there are all these well-funded permission structures that encourage us to be douchebags. And you know, but that's a whole other matter for people.
we could do another episode on that.
Yeah, right?
But I mean, you know, I think you're right, because it's like, you know, I understand when, you know, there are men who are allies who know that they don't do it, and they're like, well, I'm not like that. I'm like, well, great. Okay, so we know that, but what are you going to do do about it?
I think that in many ways, you know, what Me Too was you know, who was the least informed in the world about sexual harassment was nice guys.
Yeah.
Nice guys don't hang out with douchebags. Nice guys don't treat women like this. Nice guys hear stories about it, you know, but it's kind of hard to take seriously unless it's right in your face.
Yeah.
Or unless you know a lot of women who've told you a lot of stories. But nice guys are the last ones to know. Douchebags know, women know. And so having this reckoning, having this movement, this incredibly moral movement where powerful men were told, you can be replaced.
Right.
And it was wildly uneven. You know, there's guys who did heinous things who never got touched, and there's guys who did very mild things who were punished quite more severely than guys who did worse things. I'll be the first to agree on that.
That's very true. I'll admit that. Yep.
But Me Too, I mean, when Netflix fired Kevin Spacey, and I love Kevin Spacey, but when they fired the lead actor of their most popular show over accusations of what he did on sets. And I love Kevin Spacey as an actor. He has every right to keep on working and redeem himself in any way he wants. But in that moment, that was a corporate decision to do the right thing. And we're not used to that. That's like seeing this Pope now come out against abusing immigrants and come out against this war. For a Pope to do that, he knows there's going to be thousands and millions of conservative Catholics who are not going to put money in the basket this weekend.
Right.
He's threatening the church's own bottom line by coming out in favor of migrants and against war. But he's fucking doing it anyway because it's the moral thing to do. And
we're
not used to seeing that kind of bravery.
We're not. And it's also giving his church food for thought. There are people who are going to look at it differently because he's saying it. And I think, I believe in restorative justice. I believe that people can change their minds, and I believe that they should be supported when they do. I think that that's the way that we come together, because when people say, oh, well, if they took this stance, they're forever bad. Though I have never made the kind of mistakes that those people have. I've made mistakes, but I would never want to be held for the rest of my life on my permanent record for a mistake that I made that I was honestly sorry for and that I looked to create a change. And I think that's a conversation that we have to have around that. It's also the conversation, like when we look at like cannabis and say like, you know, so Hearst Corporation has Green State and they have, you know, cannabis news and different things. And some people get really upset because they're like, well, really, William Randolph Hearst, da 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 da. And I'm like, okay.
Weed washing.
Yeah, I'm like, dude is dead. He is so dead, he's dust. But the corporation, the people who are working for this publication for Green State, they care deeply. And they're working very hard. They're talented people. And they're trying to right the wrongs by creating this accessibility.
Hearst is one of the reasons why weed was criminalized.
Exactly. So
because he didn't want newspapers. He didn't want cheaper hemp paper competing. And he and DuPont Chemical
Yeah.
were probably the two greatest corporate reasons that weed was made illegal. And
100%.
so many people spent years and years in cages over it. So I get that. Like, Henry Ford was a monstrous anti-Semite. And so when Ford Motors wanted to be the sole corporate sponsor the night Schindler's List premiered on TV, like I'm with you. I respect anyone who wants to do that kind of public restitution. There's a great movie about restorative justice called The Prison Within by Catherine Hervey. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. And it's about an in-prison group where men convicted of horrible crimes come together to do a restorative justice program to try to actually begin to repay what they owe somehow karmically and face it and acknowledge it. And it's one of the most powerful things anyone can do spiritually. And I think we're starving for it.
Yeah.
I think people seek forgiveness. I know we love tearing people down, but look at what Hunter Biden's doing right now. Look at how Hunter Biden has earned this forgiveness and admiration of so many people just by owning his flaws and sinking so low and finding all of the humility that they teach you in the rooms and bringing all the 12-step resilience to an online campaign about just showing how to deal with trolls without hating them back.
Right.
And I think we love seeing someone who falls so low and can rise again. It's the story of Easter, It's like humiliation, suffering, death, and then rebirth. And that's what we're all waiting for with America in this time.
Yeah, I believe so. And I feel like if we can take these steps, because a lot of what we're seeing too is the acting out of generational trauma. We can only heal that through having these conversations, having acceptance, letting people start over, meaning it, of course, being authentic in it. And that's what we also have to see going back to cannabis policy and getting people out of prisons and everything. Because, for those of you listening, we've got legalization in how many states now? And do you know how many people are still in prison over this? How many families are broken apart? Or how many people are out now, but the trauma that they endured is going to stay with them for a lifetime, and generational trauma is
and they deserve
real.
to have their criminal records expunged as well.
They do.
That's Joe Biden got behind that in a big way. Joe Biden was a great example of a Democrat that I had always criticized, who really showed himself at a late period of life capable of incredible moral growth. And it wasn't like he was being kinder to trans people and weed smokers just because he thought that would make him more popular. He really came to it from a place of Catholic conviction.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do we start doing this?
We've already begun. Look what you do it with this podcast. How
do you stay sane doing this stuff every day? I know for me, the weed helps.
Have you heard about cannabis? Yeah. Has anyone told you about cannabis? And does that help you at all? Sarah? Can I?
Yes. And CBD and CBG are amazing.
Your listeners have gone through 10 gallons of bong water with this one. I've been insufferable. You're doing it. You're a model for it. You bring intelligence and decency to the game and morality, and you make it entertaining.
Thank you. Well, here's an entertaining question for you. Political figure most in need of an edible.
Oh, man. Oof. Only one, huh? Can I cut the edible into fours, maybe, if I'm in the Senate? No.
I'm all about sharing.
I don't think weed should be legal. I think it should be mandatorily forced on Congress. We got to talk about hallucinogens next.
Right.
One person who could have one, Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin. Just if I could give a good experience with a gummy and maybe realize all is one, but we might need something stronger. We might need some serious LSD with that too.
I was going to say, that one might need some higher octane fuel.
Good God, death is an illusion and all is one. What have I been doing with war? Good God, I am Dick. Yeah, it's a beautiful fantasy. But he's probably the one, I guess, who would need it the most.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. John, I have had so much fun talking with you today. Will you come back?
Yeah, anytime. I'm honored that you would have me, and thank you for being patient with my crazy schedule. I know we were supposed to do this a month ago, and I thank you for being flexible, and I thank you for all you do. It's a really moral movement, and we've seen it come a long way. And much like homophobia, young people growing up, they're not going to know about how scary it was to be a person who liked cannabis more than beer for so many years. They're not going to know about it because it's going to be normalized because of work of people like you. And so thank you for this ministry.
No, it's been a pleasure. And as we get further into legalization, the people who are worried about what about the children, moralizing it, realize that the children really don't care as much, because usually it's because you're not teaching them things and you're not letting it be available that they're actually interested in it. When your uncle does it and your dad does it and your mom does it, it's just kind of like, whatever. It's like, okay, fine.
And you know what? If you feed your kids a lot of McDonald's, please don't pretend you're that concerned about their health, folks. Come on now. I mean, we live in a country where you got to be rich to eat like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and there's greater health concerns for our nation's youth than maybe someone will smoke a joint. And if they do ever pick up a joint and smoke it in junior high school, do you want them going to be put in a cage for it?
Right.
Like, decriminalization is it is the conservative point of view. Criminalizing this is less than 100 years old. So this is an area where I think we've come such a long way, and we are going to see more and more conservatives getting on board with this.
I agree.
And by the way, Ron Paul had the greatest line, and Ron Paul's a horrible racist man, but when he ran for president the first time, and they brought up, decriminalization, and you want heroin to be legal, and all he said was, folks, if heroin became legal tomorrow, would you go start doing heroin?
Right.
No. And it's like, just stop putting sick people in jail.
Well, that's it.
It doesn't work, and it turns sick people into criminals, and it makes good people mean. And the government can tax this stuff and regulate it and tax it again and pay for education. There's so many good things to do with it. And again, the more you criminalize it, the more people want to do it. And we know that because prohibition didn't work. We tried it with alcohol 100 years ago. We saw exactly what happened. Organized crime flourished, corruption flourished, people died. There was no regulation of the alcohol. Now, holy crap, you can see what percentage of THC you've got in your goddamn brownie. Like that's what I want. With fentanyl being this scary, yes, legalize all this stuff, because I don't want any kid going out to a party and never coming home because they didn't know what they bought.
No, that's
it. If you're pro-life, that's the point of view. Pro-life means you don't want some kid at a rave to accidentally snort some fentanyl and die.
Yep.
So let's regulate it.
Reasonably regulate it, help grow small businesses, get kids interested in supply chain management. Let's do it.
Yeah. Right,
for people who want to follow you on social media and read your book, and for those of you out there, you don't have to be religious to enjoy this book.
Oh no,
it is so good.
Too.
Yeah.
That's been the nicest part, is having atheists tell me that the book validated all their beliefs.
Yeah.
Because I've had Christians and Jews say that too. My book is called Separation of Church and Hate, A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalist Fascists and Flock Fleecing Frauds. I host a daily show on SiriusXM on the Progress Channel 127. We're also a free podcast, if you don't have SiriusXM, called the John Fugelsang Podcast. Because I am a carbon-based life form, I have a Substack, and I'm on all the socials at John Fugelsang. And thank you so much, Sara, for having me. What a pleasure. I really respect what you do.
Oh, thank you so much, John. It's been so much fun having you on the show, and an honor, really. I've enjoyed your work for so long, and I'm looking forward to future conversations with you. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.